assumed it wasn't good.
That's on you.
It wasn't.
All right, we will get to the full Pinto Ron treatment in a second. We got to start, though, with the debut of the Big Three as Kyrie made his grand return. Nets and Cavs from Cleveland. Well, let's put it this way, you asked. Said Steve Nash after the game, quote, "We've got a lot of work to do." As Nick predicted, some problems on the defensive end as the Nets couldn't stop Colin Sexton, dropping 42 as Brooklyn falls in double overtime to Cleveland. Kyrie with 37 wasn't enough, though. Take a listen.
I think any one of us would definitely take a win over all those, just great stats. Those sound incredible for a first game out for a few great teammates, just first time touching the floor. But like I said, we're not so much consumed about what we can do. We're more or less responsible for, like I said, putting these pieces together and making it work. And offensively, it clearly wasn't enough tonight. We still needed to get stops on the other end. So that's going to be the tale of our season, is how committed are we to that end of the floor.
Kyrie Irving with his glass half full. But, Nick, how worrisome was this Nets loss last night?
Listen, I don't want to read too much into it. Everyone who watches the NBA knows you can't stop Colin Sexton. You can only hope to contain him. And the Nets did a pretty decent job containing him for the better part of 3.5 quarters. And then he scored 20 consecutive points. And you end up the rare blown out in overtime scenario because you allowed, 36 points in the 2 overtimes. Those were 5-minute quarters, 36 points in 10 minutes. Probably not great. 60 points allowed total in the fourth quarter in the overtimes. That's really not great. But I have 2 numbers for you. Both of them are concerning.
Good. More numbers.
And they are almost identical. Yeah. 147. That's the number of points the Nets allowed. But 148 is the number that actually should really concern my buddy Brandon Marshall. Because Brandon Marshall is not as worried about the defense as me. So let's not even focus on the abysmal defensive performance. Let's instead focus on the 148. That's the number of minutes Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden all just played. You know why? Because the old bench mob Nets now play for other people. And you're now in a position where you're like, oh my God, we got these 3 stars. We got Joe Harris, who's really good. And then we have nobody. And then we're like, Chris Chiozza, should we have him play? What about, is it Bruce? Is it Brett? What's the Brown? Who is it? I think Steve Nash just met him. Does he
so
need
now
to play?
You believe in load management?
Jeff Green. Well, Brandon, so here's the thing. I don't believe in starving myself for a week. I also don't believe in eating 38 Big Macs in a day. There is something of a happy medium. And so, no, I'm not a big fan of load management, but I also think having these 3 guys play 50 minutes each, probably not the ideal scenario for the team in mid-February.
That may be a little much.
But I don't know. It may be a little much, but I get it. You had to keep Kyrie out there to get the defensive stops.
But on the other end, you're asking Bud to make Giannis play more than 30 minutes a game. So that's all I heard last year.
30 to 50
Giannis play more and more and more.
Right.
So what do you want?
Correct. Yeah, somewhere in between.
All right, listen, Nick,
somewhere
enough with the propaganda.
This porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. This porridge is just right, as Goldilocks taught me. So somewhere in the middle is what I would say. But go ahead.
Yeah. Story.
Nick, enough with the propaganda. The inauguration was yesterday, okay? So I got to listen to you for the next 2 months talk about defense. Every time we talk about the Nets, all I'm going to hear is defense, defense, defense. I get it. I understand. But if we're going to do this, let's start with the foundation. Let's start with the fundamentals. You played basketball, Nick. You played in high school. You actually played on a really good team. You knew when we went in that gym, the first thing that we worked on was defense. And where did that start? Communication. This is their first night playing together. We talked about this yesterday. You got to be patient. It's going to take time. Yeah, they're not the best. They're not going to be the best defensive team, but these guys know what it takes to get to the finals. Now they got to get better and sacrifice once they get into the finals against the Clippers and figure out how to get it done. But the Clippers are going to have to figure out how to keep up with an onslaught of points and threes from KD, Kyrie, and James Harden. Come on, Nick. Let's stop with this propaganda, man. You know it, man. Going into the fourth quarter last night, they were down by 9. 8 minutes and 30 seconds, they're down by 13. You saw a glimpse of how they played defense. Something on the line, they clamped down. And all of a sudden, Sexton, he just goes crazy. There's nothing you can do against him. This is the glimpse. This is a glimpse of what you're going to see from the Brooklyn Nets moving forward. When something's on the line, come mid-March, they're going to play defense just like this. We can't control Sexton having a freaking career night and just freaking efficiency.
Ooh. Oh, so Brandon, I'm going to push back on that, because here's what I'd be worried about. Steve Nash really looked like a rookie coach last night. And when you say there's nothing you could do about Sexton, there's something really simple you could do. You're up 3, foul Colin Sexton before he shoots. Instead, Kyrie gave him an open 3, bang, you're going into double overtime. Then he heats up. On his way to scoring 20 consecutive points, you know what Steve Nash could have done? Timeout, guys. Who's got Michael Jordan masquerading as Colin Sexton right now? Anybody? And during that timeout, you know what you could get? Jenna's favorite, a little sugar-free Gatorade. Give everybody a breather as everyone's playing 50 minutes. Because I will buy the idea that they can step up and play defense, because Durant had 2 blocks in the first overtime. Kyrie had a block. I'm like, look at this, a little bit extra effort. But there's only so much effort you can give if you're running everybody totally ragged and playing everybody all the time. And I get the idea. I don't want to be the minutes police, Nick. I think it's a kind of a lame, like, yeah, look at this. But if that's the plan, to play them a lot of minutes, then go with it. But Steve Nash told Malik Andrews, don't want to play Kyrie a lot. Well, you ended up playing him 50 or 48 minutes. So I think the minutes thing is an issue. I think not fouling is an issue. And I think not calling a timeout when the game is on the line and you see somebody really pulling away and getting super hot is an issue. Steve Nash looked totally like a rookie coach last night.
All right, I got 3 quick things. First, and 2 of them are positive for the Nets. The first one is this. And this is totally sincere. They are going to have a massive advantage if they are up even just 1 point late in games, because they're the only team in the league that has 3 90% free throw shooters. I thought about that last night. Kyrie, Harden, KD, they're never going to lose a free throw battle, so that helps them. Secondly, nice thing for the Nets, Brandon, I do think if they played the Clippers in the playoffs, they could beat them, because the Clippers don't really have the ability to punish them. And the NBA is making a lot of these changes that Wilds has suggested. If they end up creating like a bronze medal game for the 2 teams that lose in the conference finals to see who wins that, I think the Nets would be a huge favorite there. But
you caught that.
The third thing that isn't good for them, the third thing that is not good for them, if you watch those Colin Sexton highlights, you know what you see? Every single guy on the Nets gets some. KD gets some. Jeff Green gets some. Harden gets some. Joe Harris gets some.
Of course.
Kyrie gets some. You know why? Because they ain't got a single guy who they can say go guard. So it's like, all right, you take your turn. You take your turn. You take your turn. Because they don't have a single guy except for Durant who's going to be able to guard. It's going to be a problem. Listen, but you can't just beat the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Listen,
you just hope to contain
it's going to be a problem for the next 2 months for me. It's going to be a problem for the next 2 months for me until we hit mid-March and those guys start playing defense. So have your fun for the next 2 months, and when we get to the playoffs and we get to the finals, it's going to be my time to really stand on the table and talk about the Nets.
All right. And to Wild's point, Steve Nash did say afterwards he acknowledges his team's got a lot of work to do. These 2 teams back at it again Friday night. Big playoff weekend in the NFL coming up. Rodgers, Brady.